Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the podcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we doing this fine afternoon, Steve?
I'm very well. Hello FiST Chat fans. Yes, quite happy to talk today about our topics and also just follow up on the Mars announcement.
Absolutely. We'll get into that shortly, but don't forget our website, www.fistchat.com. You can get all our links there. Interact with us on Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. And we've just introduced an Instagram sort of FiST Chat following. We used to have a whole stack of photos that were done via iPhone that we were posting, but now we're going to post them all to Instagram and you'll see them on our Twitter feed. So hopefully you'll enjoy those. As
That's it. Take a snap, FiST Chat fans, and let us know about it.
Absolutely. So you can follow us on under the name FiST Chat there as well. You can have a look at our back episodes on YouTube, Vimeo and Digicosm TV, and you can subscribe to our audio via iTunes, RSS and Feedburner as per usual. Now, just as a quick update from last week, we spoke about the Mars Rover, and we just got on before they actually announced or made the announcements. So Steve, maybe can you take us through what ended up happening after all that?
Well, it wasn't really one for the history books. The Mars Rover Curiosity is functioning perfectly. It's analysed some soil. It's found some stuff, but they don't know whether the stuff comes from Earth or Mars yet. So I guess a few more weeks and they'll let us know. If the carbon that they've detected comes from Mars, then they will probably have some bigger announcements.
Well, we'll just have to watch this space then, won't we?
We will indeed.
Okay, we'll move on to our main topic this week. And actually, we were going to talk about this last week before the whole Mars Rover thing kicked in. So, but still, we've covered this before, and it's artificial intelligence. Now, I saw, Steve, you saw a story there in the Australian from, the old end of the world, will machines take over humans kind of scenario. The idea is, could computers become cleverer than humans and take over the world, or is that just the stuff of science fiction? Philosophers and scientists at Britain's Cambridge University think the question deserves some serious study, and a proposed centre for the study of existential risk will bring together experts to consider the ways in which super intelligent technology, including artificial intelligence, could threaten our own existence.
Well, that's right. I mean, I'm glad we're thinking about it now. And the other article that's piqued my interest in this as well was the people calling to ban robots in war situations. And of course, there already are drones performing robotic tasks in the arena of war. And I guess the thing is that if we're not across, or if we don't start to think about these sorts of issues now, it may well be too late. And Asimov was writing about this sort of situation in the 1940s with his 3 laws of robotics.
Yeah.
Then he added a 4th law for principally what the group at Cambridge is saying: if computers or robots ever run the world, then the first rule that you're going to want is that a robot may not harm humanity, or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm.
Exactly. But if we're creating this artificial intelligence, but we're putting conditions on it, it's kind of almost counterintuitive to the whole process, isn't it? Because the idea is that it's supposed to be intelligent, but if you reach the stage where it can decide for itself what needs to be done, then it may also decide that its needs don't match ours. And I guess that's where the danger lies, and where, the stuff of science fiction has used that as great fodder for entertainment and material over the years, Skynet being the obvious example.
But you've hit the nail on the head there, Ben, and this is what makes this topic so interesting. So, I mean, it's not even about evil computers taking over the world. Just imagine cold logic. So as humans, we still have emotions. Some of us feel heartless at times, but we still have an emotional capacity.
Yeah.
You can have artificial intelligence without emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So what would happen, for instance, if, the logic of an artificially intelligent form really decides that, it is really for the best of humans, even if they don't want it, and we'll just force it on them anyway because it's for their own good.
Yeah, exactly right.
So you could have a situation now, for instance, with climate change, where they might just ban cars.
Yeah.
Or turn off coal power stations.
Or they take some more drastic action against us to fix up the biodiversity, which we might actually mention in our film news bite, because that sort of relates to that. But the idea...
And then when we humans fight them to have our car keys returned to us, they send in the killer robots to enforce law and order.
It can't be anything good if it ever comes to that.
But it could.
But are we talking like a certain degree of like naiveness or something on the part of these engineers that are making these sorts of technological breakthroughs, that just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should do it?
Well, that's a good question. I think from my experience, most of the people working in the field of robotics are very familiar with the laws, and just those primary three laws are, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Law 2 is a robot must obey orders except when it conflicts with the first law.
Yeah. And
the third is it must protect its own existence except when it conflicts with the first and the second law. And a good film to see is I, Robot, which has them in there, or you can read Asimov's stories. But the thing is that if you're going to form into artificial intelligent life, or artificial intelligence, well, then you have to put in those laws, because if you don't have those laws in the program, then they will just do what's right, and it might be just to exterminate someone.
I'm just wondering if any laws were written for us when we were plopped onto this blue ball that we're living on.
It's a good question, but once again, what if a machine ruling the world decided the population of 7 billion is too much? We need to reduce it to 4.
All right, round them up.
Round them up, genocide.
Yep, and it wouldn't blink twice about doing it because it's so logical.
It might even be logical then to use that excess 3 billion that you're rounding up as a food source for the other 4 billion.
Yeah. and so on.
And so on. So I think we might be talking about the extreme situations, but the truth is we live where the first generation, or our children are the first generation, who may well have a robot looking after their children.
Yeah.
And or a robot looking after their parents in old age. So we need to think about these things right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we might segue now into our film news bite, because this obviously is quite connected. Now, the main story is from The Guardian, and it was talking about how Anne Hathaway is going to be starring in Roboapocalypse, which is going to be the new film from Steven Spielberg. It's based on Daniel H. Wilson's novel, and in it, the storyline centers on a near future where domestic robots are commonplace and artificial intelligence is about to become a reality. And then there's a supremely intelligent AI in the film that becomes self-aware, and then he sets about destroying human civilization in order to preserve Earth's biodiversity, which is essentially what we were just talking about.
Exactly.
So that's quite an interesting premise and an interesting film for Spielberg to look at.
I'm very glad that Spielberg's actually making a film like this, because if anyone could at least give it a little bit of sensibility, you'd hope it would be him.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, though, he has a tendency to throw some sentimentality into his films, and it doesn't seem like the type of concept that would lend itself to that. Or whether he can humanize the AI, and they have some discussion at the end where the AI figures out that it's all wrong what it's doing
and bursts into tears.
Yeah. You never know.
As long as it doesn't end like AI did.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think that's still one of Spielberg's strengths, in that he'll be able to build in that emotional connection. And I reckon you're right on there, Ben. I think what he'll do is he'll show the gap between intelligence without emotion and human emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. So we'll look forward to that. Now, our science news bite is from the New York Times. This one, scientists see promise in deep learning programs. The idea that artificial intelligence is getting to the stage where it can recognize patterns in the way, brain patterns, and also being able to replicate those in terms of vision, speech, and other types of human abilities. And you can see that in things where they've been employed in technologies like Siri and the iPhone, etc. And that this is just the beginning, that the kind of accuracy from these types of systems is just going to expand exponentially. It's a fascinating field, but again, as long as it stays as a tool.
Well, this is the thing, of course you've got Asimo the robot, Honda's attempt, and there are other versions as well. Within 20 years, every home will be able to afford one. Within 20 years, they will be able to do a lot of the things that we don't like doing around the home. The intelligent systems, I mean, if you look at some of the extrapolations that people have done, 2035 is the point where, computers will be able to outthink humans, processing power-wise. We're headed there one way or another. And whatever, software or programming you have now, it will build. And I've no doubt at all they'll create artificial intelligence through the sorts of research you're talking about.
And of course, it goes without saying that without these technologies, we wouldn't be making the kinds of advances that we're making in terms of how we understand the way the world works, the way our solar system works, the way the universe works, and that in turn helps us to advance further in terms of what we know and what we can do.
And that's the real issue here, is that, as you say, it's great when these things are used as tools, but I don't think enough people have given enough thought. We all love the idea of a robot doing all the housework, which is fantastic, but how do you make sure the robot sticks to doing the housework and doesn't start doing something else that it just thinks, would be a good idea?
Absolutely. All right, and just finally, our tech news bite now from theglobeandmail.com. You mentioned just briefly before, ban urged on killer robots. Yeah. Now, this sounds a little ridiculous in terms of the headline, but actually what they're talking about is quite serious, and that's the idea that robots should be banned from being used in the battlefield. Now, it's sort of getting to the stage where there's a lot of autonomous weapons being used, and I believe there's one, the Israeli Defense Shield, that's up at the moment, that shoots down incoming rockets or rocket fire. And it's really, you don't want to be in a position where weapons like that don't have an off switch. Which could be a really huge problem, because then we're talking about the Terminator type scenario.
And that's the problem. It's a double-edged sword. It's wonderful to have this technology to protect us and to assist our military personnel. But how do you regulate it? And then it's a bit like nuclear weapons. Once they're created, maybe the good guys will only have them for the first 50 years. Yeah. But there will come a time when everyone will have them. Yeah. And what then? That sort of thing, will potentially occur. And if we don't, as a nation now, stop them happening or question the reasons as to why they shouldn't happen, then the reality is that we're setting ourselves up for, one of those horrible sci-fi movies.
Absolutely.
It's not good.
Okay, we're out of our topics now. Just one final thing I wanted to mention. Just reading a book called The Long Earth from Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter, which I'd recommend everyone to read. It's actually a really easy read. I only started reading it about 5 or 6 days ago, and I'm almost done. And it deals with parallel Earths, parallel universes in effect, and people having the ability to step into those worlds at will. And it's more interesting, more in terms of an exploration of human character and how humans' first tendency is to try to exploit all the resources available on these new worlds, thinking that they've got infinite sort of capacity now, and it's a really good commentary on that sort of thing. So I'd highly recommend you all have a look at that. It's a really good book.
That sounds like something I'll be reading over Christmas, Ben.
Absolutely. You've got your iPad, get on the iBook store and do it all digitally. Although I'm reading it the old-fashioned way. It's actually on paper, this one.
Very good. I'm glad to hear it.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we're out of time, so thanks again for the chat.
No problem. See you later, FiST Chat fans. Check out Instagram and tweet us with a pic.
Absolutely. So that's it for this week's episode, so we'll catch you next week.